The Mirror Hunter. Prologue. My name is Ethan Cole, 36, former operative in the Phantom Unit. 3 tour of duty, 2 commendations for valor, and 1 medal for an operation that officially never happened. I thought I'd left all my wars behind when I took a night security job at the Blackridge Museum of Contemporary Art, where my wife Naomi's mirror installation is the centerpiece of this season's exhibition. I was wrong. The most terrifying battle was just beginning, a war fought in a labyrinth of reflections made from the fragments of 1,000 mirrors, where truth has 1,000 facets, and the changed look in my wife's eyes terrifies me more than all the combat operations I've survived. Chapter 1. Fractures in Glass and Trust. The Night Shift. 2:08 a.m. The museum security room, standard surveillance rotation. Left sector, lobby empty. 5th floor, sculpture gallery unchanged. West wing, Officer Rodriguez completing his scheduled patrol according to protocol. I methodically shift my gaze from screen to screen. Perimeter control, as we called it in Phantom. Sector by sector, camera by camera. Just a job, just another night. 2:12 a.m. The Reflections Zone, this season's showcase installation, the mirror labyrinth Naomi obsessed over for 8 months. According to the monitors, the hall is empty. I move to the next camera, then back. Something caught my peripheral vision. A shadow, a reflection. 12 years in special operations taught me to trust that prickling sensation at the back of my neck. I focus the camera on the labyrinth entrance. 2:14 a.m. The image is blurry, but I clearly see 2 figures sliding between the mirror panels. The security system hasn't triggered. Professionals, maybe. My hand automatically reaches for my holstered weapon. A compact Glock 43, standard issue for private security, 6 rounds in the magazine. Not my usual combat equipment, but sufficient. I adjust the image clarity and freeze. Naomi, my wife, and with her, a tall man with a distinctive silver streak in his chestnut hair. Lucas Finch, the exhibition curator, the man who personally selected Naomi's work for the main seasonal exhibition. They're not thieves, they're trespassers. The museum is closed until morning. How did they get in? Why? Standard protocol requires calling the rapid response team, but I don't. Something in their movements, in the way Finch holds Naomi's elbow, too intimate, too familiar, stops me. Professional deformation. Maybe. But in Afghanistan, I survived because I learned to notice details that didn't fit the overall picture. And here, everything feels wrong. I increase the volume. The system captures Naomi's whisper. Are you sure no one will find out? Security patrols this sector every 40 minutes. We have 28 minutes. Finch's voice sounds muffled, reflecting off the glass surfaces. And your husband? On duty in the East Wing. He doesn't even know about this camera. A smirk twists my lips. I know every camera in the building. It's my job. Naomi is mistaken, thinking I don't check on her creation. They slip deeper into the labyrinth. A territory created by my wife, where every angle, every turn was calculated and verified by her for months. I switch to a camera deeper in the installation. The image quality is worse. Naomi insisted on atmospheric lighting, creating problems for surveillance systems. But I see enough. Betrayal in mirrors. The center of the labyrinth, an octagonal room where each wall is a mirror. According to Naomi's concept, visitors reaching the center should experience disorientation and an encounter with multiple reflections of themselves, a metaphor for the fragmentation of the modern self. That's what the exhibition catalog said. Words she processed through herself, whispered to me at night when she thought I wasn't listening. But now there are no museum visitors in the center of the labyrinth. There's Naomi and Finch. I watch as my wife embraces the curator, tilting her head back. Their kiss is reflected in dozens of mirrors, a multiplied infinity of betrayal. I see how her hands, the same hands that ran through my hair this morning, slide across Finch's back, how she presses against him. Something cold and hard tightens in my chest, a steel spring familiar from combat operations. Distance, separation of emotions from the task, what they teach phantom operatives. I turn off the sound. No need to hear their ragged breathing, whispers, fragments of phrases that might have been meant for me. I just observe, record facts. Naomi removes her black sheath dress, revealing the pale body I still considered mine. Finch explores her. One mirror seems to reflect them at a strange angle, holding the movement a fraction longer when they change position. Perhaps a glass defect, perhaps a play of light, perhaps my eyes, tired from staring at monitors. I could go down now, catch them, create a jealous scene, break Finch's well-groomed nose, twist his arm until the joints crack. I know at least 8 ways to do this without causing permanent damage. But that would be impulse, a human reaction, not an operative's. In Kandahar, such impulses cost lives. Instead, I methodically switch to the system settings for the camera in the center of the labyrinth. Activate recording. Create a backup on an external drive. Verify timestamps. By 4:07 a.m. it's over. They leave the same way they came. I track their movement through other cameras. Side exit, security code that Finch evidently knows, and they dissolve into the pre-dawn darkness. I look at the external drive with the video recording. Evidence of infidelity, enough to destroy a marriage, but my intuition suggests this is just the tip of the iceberg. In Phantom, they teach, gather intelligence before acting. Don't show your opponent that you know their tactics. Observe, document patterns, identify vulnerabilities. If this is war, and it feels exactly like that, then I've just discovered the first front line, and it runs through the center of my wife's mirror labyrinth. Patterns and observations. I'm accustomed to patterns. During my service, I identified regularities in enemy movements, convoy routes, faces of locals. 3 consecutive actions, repeated twice, already a pattern. Naomi and Finch were clearly acting according to a prepared plan, which means this is probably not a one-time occurrence. For the next 3 nights, I install additional micro-cameras at strategic points in the installation. Modified Mobius C3s, slightly larger than a button, with wide-angle optics and 48-hour autonomous power. I place them in blind spots of the main surveillance system. All data transmits to an encrypted server that only I can access. On the 3rd evening, my system intercepts the first signal. Not Naomi, another couple. A woman in her 30s with heavy diamond earrings removes her wedding ring before entering the labyrinth. A middle-aged man, I recognize Ronald Keller, owner of 3 construction companies in the city, whose face regularly appears in business chronicles. He looks around before following the woman. Her muffled laughter reflects off the mirrored surfaces. An hour later, an elderly man with gray temples and a young blonde in a black dress slip through the same entrance. My recognition algorithms identify. Samuel Higgins, editor-in-chief of the Northland Tribune. She's Melissa Cole, an intern from the political news department. 2 days of continuous observation give me the complete picture. During nighttime hours between midnight and 4 a.m., the mirror labyrinth hosts at least 3 or 4 couples, always following the same pattern, first the woman, then the man. Always precisely timed visits, 43 minutes. Always influential people from the city. A politician from the mayor's office, the head of a mortgage company, the chief tax inspector. I record everything in a spreadsheet. Names, times, duration. The pattern is flawless like a combat formation. This isn't just a series of spontaneous rendezvous, it's a system. Each couple heads to the center of the labyrinth, the octagonal room with mirrors at different angles. There, in this kaleidoscope of reflections, I observe a recurring pattern. Men and women making love, multiplied by dozens of reflections, watching their own movements in the mirrors and becoming incredibly aroused by it. My military experience suggests If there's such a clear pattern, someone is controlling it, an invisible conductor who created this scheme. I create an electronic map of visits, names, dates, duration. Blue lines connect participants with prominent positions in administration, business, media. Red lines indicate unusual decisions made by these people over the past month. The picture that emerges reminds me of a secret map of Taliban positions from my last deployment, a web of connections, invisible to the uninitiated. On the fifth night, my cameras capture Naomi and Finch again, but this time they're not alone. After they leave, an elderly couple enters the labyrinth, State Senator Harrison and his wife. Behind the senator, a well-known banker, and so on and so on. A continuous flow of people with names appearing on newspaper front pages. I remember how Naomi talked about her installation. It's not just art, it's a point of contact between realities, a place where people meet their true selves. It seems many influential people in the city are meeting their true selves under very specific circumstances. But the strangest thing I notice when reviewing the footage at increased speed, a person not detected by my algorithms, a figure appearing in the labyrinth after each visit, movement too quick, too precise, cameras fail to capture it clearly. Delay means death. I recall my instructor from training. I install an additional camera with increased frame rate. And wait. Digitize secrets. Thursday, 00:17. The last couple, media mogul Berger with his assistant, leaves the labyrinth. I turn on the new camera. The image is clear, though monochrome. A medium-height man with perfect posture enters the labyrinth rapidly. Lucas Finch. He moves through the labyrinth with the confidence of someone who knows every turn. In his hands is a small electronic device resembling a detector. He heads straight to one of the mirrors in the central room. I zoom in. Finch moves aside an almost invisible panel on the mirror frame. Inside, a miniature camera, so small that even a professional bug sweep wouldn't detect it. He extracts a tiny flash drive the size of a pinky nail. Over the next 11 minutes, the curator repeats the operation with 6 mirrors, 6 recording points, 6 flash drives which he carefully places in a special case. The pieces of the puzzle start falling into place. Finch isn't just my wife's lover. He's part of a more complex scheme, the operator of a surveillance system disguised as a work of art. At midnight on Friday, I record the next stage of the operation. Finch in his office on the 3rd floor of the museum. A tall, silver-haired man in an impeccable suit arrives there as well. The hallway surveillance cameras recorded his entrance, but his face is hidden from direct view. The man is clearly familiar with the security system's layout. My facial recognition algorithm yields a result. Magnus Blackwood, billionaire, collector, the main sponsor of the current exhibition, the man who personally approved Naomi's project and allocated additional funding for her special mirrors. The recording has no sound, but I'm good enough at lip reading, a skill necessary for silent operations. Blackwood says, "All materials in place." Finch hands him the case with flash drives. Everything according to plan. The final elements are almost ready. The last phrase makes me tense. Something in his intonation, in the way Blackwood takes the case, carefully, almost reverently, triggers an alarm in my subconscious. This isn't a simple exchange of information. It's the transfer of something vitally important. I activate additional resources I've been keeping in reserve. Hack into the museum's video archive system. Gain access to surveillance camera recordings for the past 3 months. Launch a search algorithm to identify Blackwood's visits. Results appear after 47 minutes. Blackwood has visited the museum after closing at least once a week for the past 2 months, always on Fridays, always at midnight, always meeting with Finch, and each time leaving with a small case. The collector isn't just sponsoring the exhibition. He's collecting something, something recorded in the mirror labyrinth. I launch an open-source search on Magnus Blackwood. The official biography is impressive. Financier, philanthropist, patron, contemporary art collector. Specializes in experimental forms and immersive installations. Born in Italy, educated in Britain, living in the USA for the past 15 years. Digging deeper is more difficult. I use military contacts, gain access to databases that officially don't exist, and find an oddity. Information about Blackwood before his appearance in the U.S. is fragmentary, as if someone carefully edited his past. The only lead, a mention in a low-circulation art journal. Blackwood's special interest in 18th-century Venetian mirrors, particularly the works of Master Emilio, whose products, according to legend, possessed unusual optical properties. Venetian mirrors, Naomi's mirror installation, digitized recordings of intimate moments of influential people in the city. Everything is starting to form a pattern I don't like at all. Domestic theater. You're early, Naomi startles when I enter our apartment at 10:43 p.m. She's wearing her purple silk robe, hair of the same shade gathered in a messy bun. In front of her, a laptop with sketches of a new installation. Asked Martinez to cover for me. I'm holding 2 cups of coffee from her favorite cafe. Thought you wouldn't refuse a latte. You're thoughtful. She awkwardly accepts the cup as if not expecting such a gesture. We're playing at normality. I'm the husband who doesn't know about the betrayal. She's the wife who doesn't know that I know. How's your revolutionary turn? I ask, nodding at the sketches. Naomi's eyes light up. She starts talking about her work, and I notice changes I wouldn't have caught without the information I now possess. A new amulet around her neck, a silver disc with a strange, barely visible symbol. The same inverted Y I saw on Blackwood's hand. Her gaze, sometimes losing focus, wandering as if she's looking through me, seeing something beyond our apartment. And Magnus said this could become the most significant contribution to reimagining contemporary art. Her voice changes when mentioning Blackwood, becomes quieter, more reverent. He's so insightful, sees what others don't. Blackwood, I take a sip of coffee, hiding my attention behind ordinariness. That billionaire sponsoring the exhibition. He's more than just a sponsor, Ethan. Naomi nervously twirls a lock of hair around her finger, a gesture that appeared recently. He's a visionary, understands that art can be a bridge between realities. Sounds interesting. I smile, maintaining the conversation. Do you meet with him often? We meet to discuss the concept. Her eyes avoid mine. He chose me, says I'm special. My perception, my connection with reflections, perfect for his project. The danger algorithm in my head flashes red. This doesn't sound like professional collaboration, but manipulation. And what's the essence of the project? A charity evening. Naomi becomes animated. In 3 weeks, Blackwood is modifying my installation, adding antique Venetian mirrors from his collection. I'll be the center of a live performance that will change the perception of everyone present. It will. Change my career, Ethan. Change everything. I listen, nodding oddities in her speech. The phrases sound rehearsed, as if she were repeating someone else's words. Her eyes shine feverishly. When she goes to shower, I check her laptop. I find sketches of the modified installation. The central part, an altar with an original Venetian mirror in an antique frame. Around it, a system of mirrors creating endless reflections. In the center of the composition, a female figure tied to a structure resembling an astronomical instrument. In the margins, Naomi's hand has drawn the same symbol as on her amulet, and the inscription, "The Watcher sees all." I don't sleep that night. Listen to my wife's breathing. At 3:12 a.m., Naomi gets out of bed, moving like a sleepwalker, approaches the bathroom mirror. I watch through the door crack. She whispers to her reflection. I see light through the cracks. He says I'm the key to a door that's always been here. Her reflection seems to answer with a second's delay. Or is it just a play of shadows? In the morning, I try to reach the real Naomi. Remind her of our first meeting, an exhibition in a small gallery, her installation of broken mirrors, our conversation about how art can heal trauma. For a moment, her eyes clear. She grabs my hand. Ethan, something's happening. I'm losing myself. He's in my head. The mirrors are watching. Then she blinks, smiles unnaturally wide. What were we talking about? I seem to have gotten distracted. She doesn't remember her words, but I do. And I understand that Blackwood is doing something to my wife that goes beyond mere seduction or manipulation. It resembles programming, or what we saw in terrorist camps using mind control techniques. Naomi leaves for the whole day, an important meeting with Magnus. I use this time to gain access to Lucas Finch's computer. The curator, my wife's lover and Blackwood's right-hand man, the perfect source of information. The trail leads into darkness. Hacking the museum system gave me remote access to all work computers, including Finch's machine. I initiate scanning his files from a secure location, an internet cafe 3 blocks from home. The initial results are disappointing. Finch is methodical and cautious, no compromising files, no obvious traces. But in Phantom, they taught us, there are no absolutely protected systems. Everyone has a weak spot. I find it in cloud storage, a separate folder, access to which is hidden behind a triple authentication system. The hack takes almost an hour, but the result is worth the effort. Finch's files contain detailed plans for the upcoming charity evening, a diagram of the modified installation, a list of 108 invited guests, the city's political and business elite, a detailed script for the live performance with Naomi at the center. But most importantly, documentation of Blackwood's project, about which Finch is gathering information behind his patron's back. It seems the curator doesn't fully trust the collector. He's compiled historical materials about 18th century Venetian mirrors, articles about a master named Emilio Blackwood, Magnus's ancestor. According to these documents, Emilio created a special glass processing technology allowing mirrors to retain the images reflected in them. The mirror Emilio worked on was broken under mysterious circumstances. The fragments scattered across the world, and now, according to Finch's notes, Magnus Blackwood is collecting these fragments back, incorporating them into a contemporary installation, preparing some ritual. The guest list for the charity evening exactly matches my own map of people recorded in the mirror labyrinth, as if Blackwood deliberately collected compromising material on influential people in the city. But for what? Ordinary blackmail, too primitive for a man of his scale. There's something else here. I download all the files, noticing a strange phrase in Finch's notes. The watcher awaits the completion of the mosaic, the same terminology Naomi used. After lunch, I track Blackwood from the museum to his country estate, a neo-Gothic-style mansion surrounded by a park. The central element of the complex, a stone tower about 30 meters high, much older than the main building. It looks alien, as if transferred from another time and place. Using military binoculars with 20x magnification, I observe Blackwood carrying a box, presumably with flash drives, into the tower. Then something strange happens. He pauses on the porch and slowly turns exactly in my direction. Impossible. I'm 2 kilometers away, behind dense trees in a camouflage suit. I can't be visible. And yet he looks directly at me, smiles, briefly nods as if confirming he knows of my presence. I remain motionless for an hour after his departure, take several photos of the tower through a telephoto lens. Only when reviewing them later do I notice a detail that sends chills down my spine. All the tower's windows are hung with mirrors facing outward. On one of them, the symbol is visible, the same inverted Y. Is it possible that Blackwood saw me through a system of mirrors, Absurd from an optical standpoint. But what if these mirrors work differently than ordinary ones? I recall the words of my instructor in Phantom. Unknown doesn't mean impossible. If the enemy uses a weapon you don't understand, don't deny its existence, study it. Returning home, I grasped the whole picture. The mirror installation, secret recordings, ancient Venetian ritual, the symbol on everything connected to Blackwood, changes in Naomi's behavior. Everything points to something beyond an ordinary criminal scheme. Blackwood is preparing something massive. The charity evening is just a cover for a ritual with my wife at its center, and I have 3 weeks to figure out how to stop him. I check my service weapon, additional magazine. Looking in the mirror at my reflection, I address the Ethan Cole who was in Kandahar, Mosul, Mogadishu. The operative who never lost. Time for a new mission, soldier. The objective, save my wife, and possibly all these people from Blackwood's list. My reflection nods, and it seems to do so with a second's delay. Like all reflections in this story, which is just beginning. Chapter 2. The Fractured Reflection. War requires intelligence. It doesn't matter who you're fighting, Taliban in the mountains of Afghanistan or a mysterious billionaire obsessed with mirrors and rituals. Information is both weapon and armor. In the Phantom unit, we'd study a target for weeks before taking the first shot. And now I'm planning an operation with the same methodicity. My target, Magnus Blackwood. My territory, his country estate with the Gothic Tower. And my reconnaissance shows I have just 6 hours while he's at a charity reception at the Metropolitan Club. Infiltration into the lair. At the 5th kilometer of my run, I slow down. Nothing suspicious about a man in a tracksuit who stopped to catch his breath by a hedge. Surveillance cameras record me, but I'm just part of the background. A jogger who veered off route. The perimeter of Blackwood's estate is better guarded than I anticipated. Infrared motion sensors, hidden high-resolution cameras, patrols with German shepherds, every 37 minutes. Professional level, not what you'd expect from an art collector. I spot a blind zone between 2 cameras, 6 seconds, enough to slip through the hedge. Troubling that such an obvious miscalculation remains in the system. Either the designers are amateurs or it's bait. I'll risk testing it. In my backpack I carry minimal equipment, a portable electronic device scanner, compact wire cutters, a Ka-bar knife, a gun unsanctioned, without a serial number, thanks to old military connections, and a folding monocular with night vision mode. I slip into the gap between cameras ready to be spotted, but no alarm triggers. I continue moving from tree to bush, from bush to service building. The guards move in predictable routes, the main mistake of any security system. People aren't machines, they create patterns. The main mansion building glitters with lights, but the Gothic tower hides in shadow. A separate corridor leads to it from the main house, immersed in half-darkness. I check the doors, all locked, windows protected by alarms. But the tower is older than the main building. It must have other routes. And I find it, a narrow technical crawlspace hidden behind a decorative ventilation grate. I can squeeze through, though it will require effort. Crawling 20 meters through a tight tunnel is nothing compared to the submarine simulator training we did in Phantom. That was 2 hours in complete darkness with limited oxygen. Here, just a few minutes of discomfort. The tunnel ends in a technical room. Old boilers, tools, dust on the floor. No one has entered for months. The perfect entrance for someone who wants to remain undetected. Down a narrow spiral staircase I descend into the basement. Here the air changes, becomes dry, chemical. A faint sound of working electronics comes from behind a massive oak door. I check it, unlocked. Mistake or confidence? I open the door and freeze on the threshold. What I see bears no resemblance to anything I've encountered before. A laboratory, but not an ordinary one with modern equipment. Here centuries collide, Ancient alchemical devices coexist with high-tech computers. A wall of monitors displays recordings from Naomi's mirror installation. On each screen, a close-up of a face in a moment of intimate closeness. Here's Senator Harrison, his mouth distorted in ecstasy. Here's Banker Thompson's wife, her eyes closed, head thrown back. Here's Melissa Cole, that intern from the newspaper. The recordings form a mosaic of reflections, assembled by an invisible operator. I notice something strange. In each recording there's a moment when a person's reflection noticeably delays, moves asynchronously with the original, as if for a fraction of a second it existed independently. On a massive central table, a diagram of Naomi's museum installation. 47 mirrors marked with red dots. Next to it, technical documentation describing microchips embedded in the frames. Tiny transmitters, ultra-thin conductors covered with some silvery compound. I photograph everything I see using my encrypted device. Record facts. Emotions can be processed later. A glass cabinet on the far wall attracts my attention. Inside, a collection of samples, pieces of antique glass, fragments of mercury amalgam, vials with a dark substance. Each sample is labeled with a date, the earliest, 1724. On the adjacent table, an ancient folio, its pages yellowed with time. The text is in Old Italian, but the diagrams are understandable without translation. Mirrors of special construction, arranged along geometric lines. Human figures in the center of the composition. And the same symbol, the inverted letter Y, on every page. Next to the book, a modern laboratory journal, a methodical, scrupulous record of experiments. The last page dated yesterday, 4750 fragments integrated into the system, resonance stable, conductor prepared, final phase in 14 days. Above a note, possible complication EC. I've been included in the equation. Blackwood knows I'm watching him. Voices from the shadow. The sound of footsteps catches me over the journal. 2 people descending the stairs. Conversation muted but discernible. One voice, Blackwood's characteristic Italian accent. The second lower with British intonations. I quickly assess options. The door through which I entered is too far. No windows. The only hiding place, a massive wooden cabinet in the corner of the laboratory, stacked with books and instruments. I squeeze into the space between the cabinet and the wall. Not ideal, but if they're not specifically looking, they won't notice. In sniper missions, I've lain in exposed positions for hours without being discovered. The key, breath control, complete immobility. The laboratory door opens. Blackwood and his assistant, a tall man with military bearing, enter. I recognize the second man, Sebastian Wright, former SAS fighter. 5 years ago, he was excluded from the unit under unclear circumstances. Now it's clear where he went. Monitoring shows all changes are stable, says Wright, approaching the monitors. The subjects don't even realize the psychological changes. The Venetian ritual requires strong emotions, passion, fear, euphoria. Blackwood runs his fingers over the installation diagram. Each mirror fragment is saturated with this. When a person is in ecstasy or terror, their soul is exposed, becomes vulnerable. The camera system has captured all necessary moments, recordings processed. Blackwood nods, adjusting his immaculate shirt cuff. But Naomi is special. Her connection with mirrors existed even before our acquaintance. Her soul resonates with the artifact. She's the perfect conductor. Did you see her works before I met her? She intuitively reproduced the principles of Venetian glass without knowing the theory. This is no coincidence. Naomi is ready, but her husband is a problem, Wright frowns. Military background, skills he's retained. My sources say he was one of the best in Phantom, the type they send when others return in body bags. Blackwood waves dismissively, and I notice a scar in the shape of an inverted Y on his hand. A toy soldier, accustomed to direct conflicts. We're waging a war of reflection, Sebastian. He may be dangerous in a world of bullets and blood, but what does he know about the subtle matter between worlds? In a week at the charity evening, the ritual will be completed, and no soldier can stop what exists outside the physical world. They lean over the central table. Blackwood activates a projection, a three-dimensional diagram of the museum with flickering points indicating the location of mirrors. The watcher has waited for centuries, continues Blackwood. When my blood becomes the conductor, his essence can fully connect with the physical world, and the city's elite, gathered in one place, surrounded by activated mirrors, the perfect energy reservoir. Wright looks concerned. Are you sure you can control him? Blackwood pauses, his voice becomes colder. He has existed beyond the boundary for almost 3 centuries, gathering knowledge, accumulating power. You think I would become his instrument without guarantees? We made a deal. My blood, his path to our world. In exchange, I get what he has accumulated across the boundary of reality. Immortality, Sebastian. Not figurative, not in the memory of descendants. Real, physical immortality. Wright looks at the diagram. And Naomi, what happens to her after the ritual? Her soul will become an anchor, answers Blackwood calmly. The first of many, she will pave the way for others. It's an honor, Sebastian, a great honor. I clench my fists so hard that my nails dig into my palms. For the first time since the operation began, emotions break through my professional mask. They talk about my wife as if she's expendable material. This sobers me, focuses me. Enemy identified. Objective clear. Blackwood checks his watch antique, with an intricate dial. We must go, guests are waiting. At 10, I have a meeting with Finch for a final check of the diagram. You'll ensure security. Already arranged, sir. Additional personnel arrive tomorrow. They leave, turning off the main light but leaving the monitors on. I wait 10 minutes, then leave my hiding place. My muscles are stiff, but my mind crystal clear. I know what to do next. I need more information, and I know where to get it. Lucas Finch, curator, my wife's lover, and a cog in Blackwood's mechanism. He's my next source. Interrogation with prejudice. At Finch's house, I wait in a car rented under false documents. It's a modest townhouse in the arts district, not what you'd expect from a successful curator. Either Finch isn't that successful, or he prefers to hide his prosperity. At 11:17 p.m., a taxi stops at the entrance. Finch exits, pays the fare, climbs the steps, pauses to check his mailbox. His movements betray fatigue and tension. Shoulders dropped, gaze anxious. I let him enter the house, wait 5 minutes, enough for him to relax, maybe pour a drink. Then approach the door, using a card lock pick, a simple but effective device that opens most standard locks. Finch is in the living room. Whiskey with ice, shoes kicked off, tie loosened. I close the door so quietly that he notices me only when I'm already in the room. His hand freezes halfway to his mouth. The glass trembles. Mr. Cole, his voice betrays fear, but he tries to maintain a professional tone. What an unexpected visit. For both of us, I reply, approaching closer. Not threateningly, but confidently reducing the distance. I'd prefer to enjoy a quiet evening at home, but my wife talks to mirrors, my cameras show you together in the labyrinth she created, and Magnus Blackwood is planning some ritual where she's the conductor. So here we are. Finch tries to stand. I gently push him back into the armchair. Don't complicate things, Lucas. I'm not in the mood. You break into my house and... I interrupt him, pressing him against the wall. What are you doing with my wife? What ritual is Blackwood preparing? I don't understand what you're... The red case hidden in the ventilation shaft of your bedroom, I say. Flash drives in the hollow book on the 3rd shelf, the hiding place in the bathroom behind the mirror. I was there while you were at the reception. I know about the video recordings you collect, about the people you blackmail, and that Blackwood is blackmailing you. This is a bluff. I wasn't in his house before, but I've seen how people of his type organize their hiding places, and I can tell by his eyes that I've hit the mark. Finch deflates like a punctured balloon. His shoulders drop even lower, panic in his eyes. You don't understand. If I talk, he'll destroy me. Not just my career, me. If you don't talk, I'll destroy you, I reply calmly. And believe me, Blackwood at least has style. I have only efficiency. Finch looks at me, assessing the threat, then nods, acknowledging defeat. Blackwood blackmailed me, he says quietly. First asked only for access to the museum after closing, then demanded technical specifications of all exhibition halls, then information about your wife. Why? Because of her work with mirrors. He's obsessed with them, collects them all his life, but not as an ordinary collector. He believes they possess power. Finch rises, moves to the bookshelf. His hands shake as he pulls out a folder. Here, I gathered this secretly, tried to understand what I got involved in. I take the folder. Inside, faded photocopies of ancient documents, records in different languages, schemes and diagrams. Blackwood is collecting fragments of an ancient Venetian mirror created by alchemist Emilio Blackwood in 1724, explains the curator. His ancestor. According to these documents, the mirror possessed special properties. It could capture parts of souls of people reflected in it. Sounds like mystical nonsense. I thought so too, until I saw the evidence. Recordings from cameras in your wife's installation. The reflections. Sometimes they move on their own, for a fraction of a second but noticeable in slow-motion playback. Finch points to a photograph of an antique mirror in an ornate frame. The original mirror was broken under mysterious circumstances, fragments scattered across the world. Blackwood has spent the last 30 years collecting them. Now he's incorporated them into a contemporary installation, your wife's work. She doesn't know her mirrors contain these fragments. What does he want to do with them? Complete a ritual his ancestor couldn't finish. Open a path between worlds, as he puts it. I thought it was a metaphor, an artistic image, but he believes it literally. Finch pauses, then adds, Naomi isn't just a victim. Blackwood believes she possesses an innate gift necessary to activate all fragments simultaneously, some special type of perception. He calls her the perfect conductor. I remember how Naomi sometimes described her sensations from music, in colors and shapes, how she could watch the play of light for hours. Synesthesia, that's what it's called. A rare neurological condition where one type of perception involuntarily triggers another. You were with her, on his instructions. Finch looks away, and I see shame in him. At first, yes, he ordered me to get close to her, make her more receptive to his influence. But then, he falters, I really fell in love with her talent, her vision of the world, and now I don't know how to save her. I look at him, a pathetic, confused man who became a pawn in someone else's game. He's genuinely in love with my wife. In any other situation, I would hate him. Now, he's just another piece of the puzzle. What will happen at the charity evening? Blackwood modified the installation, added the final fragments, reinforced the scheme with special components. In the center will be an altar with an antique frame for the final mirror fragment. Naomi will be tied to the structure, part of a live performance, as they'll explain to the public. But in reality, Finch pales. I saw the ritual dagger, an ancient Venetian stiletto, in his office. It was on a special stand in a glass case. Now everything is clear. Blackwood isn't just planning an occult ceremony, he's preparing a ritual murder of my wife, in front of a crowd of the city's elite who will think they're seeing contemporary art. Thank you for the information, I say, standing. If any of this is a lie, I'll return, and our conversation will be much less pleasant. What are you going to do? His voice shows genuine concern. What I was trained to do, I answer, Protect the innocent at any cost. Secrets of Venetian glass. I study Finch's materials in a motel on the outskirts of the city. Cheap room, paid in cash. Perfect place for someone who doesn't want to be found. The folder contains real treasures for investigation. 18th century engravings depict mirrors of special construction, arranged according to geometric patterns. People in the center of compositions, with distorted faces, as if in ecstasy or agony. Historical records report disappearances after contact with cursed reflections. Aristocrats, scientists, priests, suddenly vanishing without a trace. The name of Emilio Blackwood appears in Venetian Inquisition documents. An alchemist, expelled from the city on charges of unnatural sciences and communication with forbidden entities. His main discovery, a method of processing mercury glass, creating an effect of internal light. In a diary, which apparently belonged to one of Emilio's apprentices, there are remarkable observations. Master Emilio claims that mirrors are windows not only to our world, but to other spheres of existence. With proper tuning, he says, one can create resonance between our world and what lies beyond reflections. The most important find, a fragment of Emilio's own diary in Old Italian. I use an online translator to understand key points. The mirror does not reflect light, it stores its dazzling power, as well as the shadows of those who looked into it. I discovered that a special amalgam composition, including mercury from underground mines beneath an old cemetery, creates an effect of delayed reflection. A face reflected in such a mirror persists for a fraction of a second even after the object has turned away. This proves my theory. Part of the observer's essence remains in the mirror. Further, Emilio describes experiments to enhance this effect. Special glass cutting, silver threads fused into the frame, mercury amalgam mixed with unknown substances. And finally, a description of the main experiment. I created a system of 12 mirrors arranged around a central one, my masterpiece. When an object is in the center and experiences strong emotions, passion, fear, ecstasy, its reflections in all mirrors begin to live their own lives. They move asynchronously, creating an effect of multiplicity. I believe this is not an optical illusion, but a breakthrough in the barrier between worlds. The last entry breaks off in mid-sentence. Today I will conduct the final experiment. If my theory is correct, then light reflected from all mirrors simultaneously and focused on the central one will create a portal for. After this, nothing. The story ends abruptly, but from accompanying documents I learned that the same night in Emilio's laboratory, an accident occurred. Mirrors were broken, the alchemist himself disappeared, and his apprentices were found in a state of madness, muttering about a man who went into the glass. Gradually, I understand the whole picture. Naomi's installation isn't just contemporary art. It's a reconstruction of Emilio Blackwood's experiment, parts of which were scattered across the world. Magnus is collecting the fragments, incorporating them into a modern construction, using technology to enhance the effect. And my wife, with her special perception, is to become the sacrifice completing the ritual begun almost 300 years ago. All this sounds like the ravings of a madman, but during my years of service, I've seen things that didn't fit into rational explanation. In an Afghan village, I met a blind old man who accurately described the location of an ambush waiting for us beyond the pass. In Syria, I saw a shepherd speaking 7 languages, including ancient Aramaic, which isn't taught in schools. The world is full of the inexplicable. And even if I don't believe in the mystical power of Blackwood's mirrors, I definitely believe in his intention to kill my wife. And that's all I need to know for planning the operation. Changes in Naomi. At home, I notice more disturbing changes in Naomi's behavior. She sits for hours in front of the bathroom mirror, not moving, as if in a trance. Her sketchbook is filled with strange symbols, spirals, intertwining lines, geometric patterns matching the diagrams from Emilio's documents. When I ask her about these drawings, she answers mechanically. These are resonance diagrams. Magnus says they'll help me focus energy during the performance. Her voice sounds monotone, without the usual emotional nuances. Her eyes seem foggy, like soldiers returning from particularly difficult missions, physically present but emotionally disconnected. On Saturday morning, I find her in the studio, all walls hung with mirrors of different sizes and shapes. She stands in the center, slowly turning, observing her reflections. "Naomi," I call. She doesn't react, continuing to rotate like a music box. "Naomi," I repeat louder. She stops but doesn't turn around. "I see light through the cracks of reality," she says to her reflection. "He says I'm the key to a door that's always been here." I approach her, carefully turn her toward me. Her pupils are dilated, gaze unfocused. "Who's speaking, Naomi?" "Blackwood." "Not Magnus," she smiles, a strange, absent smile. "The Watcher, the one who waits behind the glass. He has observed us for so long, collecting our reflections. Soon he will be able to return." This sounds like delirium, but in the context of Finch's materials, it takes on a sinister meaning. I try to reach the real Naomi, the woman I fell in love with 5 years ago. "Remember our first meeting?" I ask, holding her gaze. "The Broken Reflections exhibition at Anderson Gallery. You stood by your installation of mirror fragments collected after the explosion in the old quarter. You said each fragment was a piece of someone's story, preserved in glass. Remember what you told me when I asked why you do this?" For a moment her eyes clear, as if a veil falls away. She grabs my hand with unexpected strength. "Ethan, something's happening. I'm losing myself. He's in my head, mirrors watching. They show other versions of me, and I don't know which is real." I hold her tightly, trying to keep her in this moment of clarity. "Who is the Watcher, Naomi? What does he want?" "He was the first to go into the mirror," her voice trembles. "Emilio, he didn't die, Ethan. He crossed over and now wants to return, use me as a bridge." Suddenly her body jerks, her eyes roll back. When she focuses her gaze again, Naomi blinks as if just waking up. "What were we talking about?" she asks with genuine confusion. "I got distracted for a minute." She doesn't remember our conversation, but I remembered every word, especially about Emilio, who went into the mirror. Sounds crazy, but matches the records of his mysterious disappearance. I need to act faster. Naomi no longer fully controls herself. Whatever Blackwood is doing, hypnosis, drugs, or something more inexplicable, it's working. My wife is disappearing and someone or something else is coming in her place. Ritual map. Lucas Finch's computer provided me with details of the upcoming charity evening. Diagram of the modified installation. The mirror labyrinth transformed into a complex construction converging to a central platform. A list of 108 invited guests, the city's political and business elite. A detailed plan of the live performance with Naomi at the center. I need to see the installation changes with my own eyes. Using my position as a night security guard, I enter the museum after closing. Formally, I'm not on shift, but security knows my face. No one asks questions. The mirror labyrinth is no longer what it was a week ago. Additional panels, new mirrors in exquisite frames. Engineering installers completing work according to the scheme I saw at Blackwood's. I wait until the last worker leaves, then carefully examine the construction. The central part, a platform with metal fastenings, obviously for fixing the live installation, Naomi. Above the platform, a massive antique frame awaiting the final mirror fragment. Examining the back of mirror panels, I discover microchips with transmitters embedded in each frame. Ultra-thin conductors, covered with a silvery compound, connect them into a single circuit. From a technical standpoint, it's impressive. Blackwood has combined ancient knowledge with modern technology. Each mirror has a marking, a number and a small symbol, unique for each panel. I check them against documentation found in Finch's computer. Everything matches. This is an exact replica of the scheme described in Emilio Blackwood's diary, but scaled and enhanced by modern means. In the service room, I find a power distribution map for the installation. The consumption is colossal, 10 times more than required for normal lighting and special effects, so there are components in the system requiring serious power, perhaps signal amplifiers for microchips, or something creating a special electromagnetic field. The technical part of the magical ritual becomes clearer. Blackwood is using electronics to enhance the effect described by his ancestor, that very reflection delay I noticed in the recordings. But this doesn't explain the changes in Naomi, or the strange reflections that move asynchronously. If all this is just a high-tech staging for psychological impact on the city's elite, why does my wife hear the voice of the Watcher? Why does she talk to mirrors when she thinks no one is watching? There's something more here than just technology, something I can't explain through rational analysis. A sudden thought makes me stop. I take out the pocket mirror I carry for tactical purposes, inspecting corners and enclosed spaces. Raise it, observing my reflection against the background of the installation. And I see it, a barely noticeable delay in movement when I turn my head, as if my reflection is a fraction of a second behind me, or resisting the movement. I blink and the effect disappears, perhaps fatigue, perhaps a play of light, or perhaps there's a grain of truth in Blackwood's crazy theory. Tomorrow is the charity evening, the culmination of long months of preparation. Blackwood will complete his ritual. I must stop him. On my way out of the museum, I notice my reflection in the glass doors. For a moment, it seems to me that it's smiling, although I'm absolutely certain my face maintained an expressionless look. Imagination, or a warning. Ethan Cole, former Phantom Unit operative, will be ready for both possibilities. Chapter 3. The Watcher Beneath the Surface. For most people, war is just a word. For me, it's a way of life that seeped into my skin during 12 years in Phantom. War doesn't end when you return from the battlefield. It transforms, changes front, but continues inside. Now preparing for the operation at the museum, I feel the familiar chill along my spine. Mental clarity, heightened senses, combat readiness that turns the body into a weapon and the mind into a computer calculating probabilities. Enemy identified. Hostage located. Objective clear. Disrupt Blackwood's ritual and extract Naomi alive. Military preparation. The bathroom of our apartment has transformed into a command center. Museum blueprints spread on the floor, critical points marked in red. Evacuation plan, technical specifications of security systems, guard patrol schedules. In Phantom training they taught us. The better prepared one wins. Naomi left 5 hours ago, final preparations with Magnus. Her voice sounded mechanical, her eyes remained empty. Attempting to forcibly restrain her would only draw Blackwood's attention. Sometimes you need to let the target think they control the situation. I open a hidden compartment under a floorboard in the corner of the room. Here I keep what Naomi doesn't know about, my emergency equipment. A modified Sig Sauer P365 with less lethal rounds. They won't kill a person with a proper shot, but will definitely incapacitate. 2 silent activation smoke grenades. A compact electronic jamming device, capable of suppressing any wireless communication within a 15-meter radius for 30 seconds. A titanium Ka-Bar fixed-blade knife. A high-complexity lock pick set, all compact, easily concealable. I dress methodically, checking each element. Waiter's pants black with an additional inner pocket for the weapon. White shirt, roomy in the shoulders to avoid restricting movement. Level III concealed bulletproof vest, thin but capable of stopping a pistol bullet. Over it, a formal waiter's vest, perfectly concealing the equipment. The counterfeit invitation is flawlessly made. My new status, catering coordinator assistant, Alex Fowler. Lucas Finch provided me with this pass, his last act of redemption for betraying my wife. Blackwood won't notice me, he said, handing over the documents. I'm just another organizer in his eyes, but he'll be looking for you. He was right. I'll be moving in a high-risk zone. I take out a disguise kit from the closet. Contact lenses changing eye color from blue-gray to brown. Special wax for altering the shape of cheekbones and chin. Temporary hair dye, 2 shades darker than my natural color. Not a complete transformation, but enough for facial recognition cameras to yield a low match percentage. I pick up my phone, hand-assembled with a modified operating system, impossible to track. Activate an encrypted communication channel with Finch. If the situation follows the worst-case scenario, he's my insurance. Not ideal, but the only one available. Before leaving, I pause at the bathroom mirror. My movements are precise, economical, as in a combat operation. But something's wrong with the reflection. For a fraction of a second, it seems the person in the mirror moves with a slight delay. I shake my head. Self-suggestion, caused by all this madness with rituals and magical mirrors. Professional deformation, as psychologists at the Veterans Rehabilitation Center would say. Don't let Blackwood get into your head too, I tell my reflection. I could swear it smiles back. Evening of Illusions. The Blackridge Museum of Contemporary Art sparkles with lights. A red carpet stretches from the main entrance, lined with journalists, photographers, security in tuxedos with barely noticeable earpieces. I enter through the service entrance. My cover is flawless. Alex Fowler, 32, 5 years in catering, specializing in elite events. ID attached to my chest pocket, professionally indifferent gaze. The turnstile reads the QR code, the system gives a green light. The kitchen bubbles with activity. Chefs finalizing elaborate appetizers, bartenders mixing cocktails. The coordinator distributes final instructions. I blend into a group of waiters receiving trays of champagne. New guy, asks a dark-haired girl beside me. First day, I nod. Alex. Lauren, stick with me. I'll show you which zones are where. Perfect. Natural cover and access to information simultaneously. We exit into the museum's main hall. The space is transformed beyond recognition. The usual gallery has become a futuristic installation. Strobe lights, wall projections, plasma screens displaying fragments of distorted faces. But the main feature, the mirror labyrinth in the center of the hall. Naomi's modified installation now occupies almost 300 square meters. Mirror panels of different heights and widths create a complex route, gradually narrowing to the central platform. Unlike the original version, where everyone could choose their own path, this construction deliberately leads visitors in a spiral to the center. Guests have already started arriving. Evening dresses, tuxedos, jewels on necks and wrists. Smiles, champagne, social conversation. No one suspects that instead of a charity evening, they've been invited to a ritual sacrifice. I maneuver between groups of visitors with a tray, professionally inconspicuous. Systematically scan the room, noting details. 6 guards with obvious military bearing, active communication earpieces, concealed holsters under jackets. 2 technicians controlling lighting and sound. Museum staff, most in their usual positions, but 3 new ones, with tense movements and attentive gazes. More of Blackwood's fighters disguised as employees. Blackwood himself appears at 8:17 p.m. Impeccable tuxedo, perfect posture, silver-streaked hair arranged hair by hair. Next to him, the museum curator, director, city mayor. The collector radiates confidence and charisma. His right hand, with the scar in the shape of an inverted Y, is hidden by a perfect white glove. And then I see Naomi. My heart skips a beat, although I'm prepared for this moment. She looks nothing like my wife. Pale, with sunken eyes, face frozen like a mask. Purple hair contrasts with a white dress of ritual design. a complex geometric construction of dense fabric with silver embroidery reproducing the symbols she's been drawing in recent weeks. Around her neck, a massive silver ornament with a central blue stone. Blackwood leads her to the center of the hall for a welcome speech. Naomi moves mechanically, like a marionette. I unobtrusively approach, continuing to offer champagne to guests, ending up within earshot. Dear friends, Blackwood's voice envelops the audience. Today we've gathered to witness not just art, but true transformation. Ms. Cole will guide us all through the mirrors of perception to true vision, to what lies hidden beyond everyday reality. Applause, admiring glances. No one notices how one of Blackwood's assistants discreetly pours a clear liquid from a tiny vial into Naomi's glass. She drinks automatically, following Blackwood's silent command. The live installation will begin precisely at 9:30 p.m., continues the collector. Until then, enjoy the conversation and exquisite refreshments. And of course, first impressions of the updated labyrinth of reflections, which now includes fragments from my collection of 18th century Venetian mirrors. Naomi smiles an empty smile. Her facial expression doesn't change when she turns to different groups of guests. Not a living person, a puppet controlled by invisible strings. While the public admires the updated installation, I notice Blackwood whispering something to the head of security. The man tenses, his gaze beginning to scan the hall. They're looking for me. They anticipated I might appear and have now activated the search. I slowly retreat to a less illuminated part of the hall, continuing to play the role of an attentive waiter. After 20 minutes, I see Blackwood leading Naomi to the center of the labyrinth. Operation time is shrinking. I need to act immediately. First contact. I use the cocktail hour commotion to approach the edge of the labyrinth. Guests enter and exit, laugh, take selfies against endless reflections. I glide between groups, inconspicuous in my waiter's uniform until I find myself just meters from Naomi. Blackwood is distracted by a conversation with an influential politician. This is my chance. I quickly intercept Naomi by the arm, drawing her into a side corridor of the mirror labyrinth, where reflections hide us from outside eyes. Naomi, I say quietly, removing the tinted glasses, part of my disguise. It's me, Ethan. She looks at me with an unfocused gaze, her pupils so dilated that the iris is barely visible. Drug in the champagne, I realize. Something causing high suggestibility and dissociative state. Ethan, her voice sounds distant. I can't, he's in my head, mirrors. Listen to me carefully. I squeeze her shoulders, trying to break through the fog. Blackwood is using you. This isn't a performance. It's a ritual and you're in danger. We need to get out of here. For a moment, her gaze clears. The Watcher, he's waiting, behind the reflections. Emilio didn't die, Ethan. He went into the mirror and now wants to return through me. I know, but I won't let that happen. Hold on, I'll get us. Suddenly, her face contorts with terror. He sees, she whispers, looking over my shoulder. He always sees through reflections. I turn sharply and see in the mirror opposite the reflection of Blackwood's guard. He stands around the corner of the corridor, not seeing us directly, but in the reflection our figures are clearly visible. His face changes from puzzlement to recognition. Military bearing, scar across the eyebrow, former special forces, I determine. Our gazes meet in the mirror, professional recognition. It's him, into the guard's radio. Subject in Sector D7. I instantly assess the situation. Naomi is in such a state that extracting her unnoticed won't succeed. I need to buy time, create a diversion. Meet me at the center, I tell Naomi, knowing she'll head there anyway according to Blackwood's plan. Whatever happens, remember, I'm here to protect you. I release her, allowing her to return to the route prescribed by the ritual. I turn toward the approaching guard, overturn a tray with glasses, creating commotion and blocking his path. Frightened exclamations from guests, tinkling of broken glass, champagne on expensive shoes, perfect distraction. I'm already in motion, gliding between mirror panels. From the corner of my eye, I see the guard calling for backup. 3 professional combatants against 1 special forces operative in a mirror labyrinth. Usually, I'd say the odds are even. But here, among distorted reflections, where reality blends with illusion, the advantage is mine. The pursuit begins. A game of hide and seek among endless reflections, where each can be both hunter and prey. Dance of shadows. The mirror labyrinth is the perfect environment for evasion tactics and sudden strikes. I glide between panels, using the installation's architecture, corridors, niches, unexpected dead ends, appearing and disappearing in a kaleidoscope of reflections. The guards have split up, trying to surround me. A good tactic if not for the space's peculiarities. Here, among endless reflections, smaller groups become more vulnerable. A loner is harder to track through mirrors than a coordinating pair. I wait, assessing their movements. The first guard, youngest of the 3, acts too predictably. He's trained for open confrontations, not for this environment. Choosing a moment when he's isolated from colleagues, I appear from a blind spot behind him. Strike to the carotid artery, precisely calculated pressure. Not to kill, to incapacitate. When he loses consciousness, I catch him, carefully lowering him to the floor behind one of the mirror panels. Take his earpiece, insert it in my ear. Now I hear their coordination. Sector B clear, checking C4. Received. I'm at the northern entrance to the labyrinth. Knowing their positions is a critical advantage. I move silently, using the labyrinth's acoustic peculiarities. Sounds reflect off mirrors, creating false sources. I deliberately touch a panel in one part of the labyrinth, appear in the opposite. The second guard moves more professionally. Checks corners, controls blind spots. But he's undermined by a basic principle of perception. Humans believe their eyes. In this installation, a fatal error. I allow him to see my reflection in a distant mirror as if I'm 10 meters ahead. He accelerates, going on the offensive, not noticing I'm behind him. Reflection within reflection, an optical illusion created by the specific arrangement of mirrors. The moment he passes me, I attack. A blow to the solar plexus deprives him of breath. The next switches off consciousness. Kier, report position, comes through the earpiece. No response. Kier, Bradley, come in. The third guard, judging by his voice, most experienced. He understands something's wrong. I hear him switch to a separate channel. Potential security breach in the labyrinth. 2 operatives not responding, requesting backup. Time is running short. I must neutralize him before backup arrives. This fighter moves more cautiously, avoiding open spaces, checking reflections in a pocket mirror. Smart move. He corners me in the western part of the labyrinth, a narrow corridor ending in a triangular niche surrounded by mirrors, the only exit past him. End of game, Cole, he says, drawing a silenced pistol. Come out with hands raised. He knows my name, knows who I am. I assess options. Combat in restricted space is disadvantageous. Need to create advantage. I take out a pocket mirror, holding it at such an angle as to create a false reflection of my position. Simple but effective trick. The guard sees my approach from the right, though I'm actually moving from the left. When he fires at the false target, I'm behind him. He's good, senses movement, turns faster than I expected. We engage in close combat, blocks, strikes, holds. His technique reveals special training, possibly Navy SEALs or equivalent unit. You don't understand, he whispers when we clinch. The Watcher has waited centuries. This is more than just a ritual. I manage to apply a chokehold, cutting blood flow to the brain. Before losing consciousness, he forces out final words. The lighthouse, tower, everything leads to the beacon. His body goes limp. I check his pulse, stable. Search him and find a strange discovery, a miniature transmitter in his ear, different from standard security equipment. I install it in my ear, hear Blackwood's voice. We begin now, they won't contain him. No time left. I move to the center of the labyrinth, every nerve, every muscle in combat readiness. The final confrontation is inevitable. Performance with sacrifice. The central part of the labyrinth is transformed beyond recognition. The octagonal room, where visitors once contemplated their multiple reflections, has now become a ritual space. The floor is covered with a complex geometric pattern of glowing lines. In the center, a platform resembling an astronomical instrument, concentric circles rotating independently of each other, with metal fastenings for hands and feet. Above the construction, a massive antique mirror frame, still empty. Naomi is tied to this construction, her arms and legs fixed in a position resembling the Vitruvian Man, a classical symbol of perfect proportions. Her white dress contrasts with the dark metal of the fastenings. Eyes closed, face serene, as if she's sleeping. Blackwood stands nearby, having already changed his elegant tuxedo for ceremonial garments, a long mantle of deep blue with silver embroidery. Gloves removed, and I see his right hand with the characteristic scar in the shape of an inverted Y. Around, the city's elite, arranged around the perimeter of the central room. They observe with admiration and slight confusion, accepting what's happening as avant-garde contemporary art. None of them understand the real nature of the event they're attending. Blackwood raises his hands in a theatrical gesture. Dear guests, his voice is amplified by hidden speakers, creating an effect of multiple voices. Today we stand at the boundary of worlds. Through Ms. Cole's art, through my collection, and through your energy as witnesses, we will open the doors of perception. The light changes, becomes pulsating. Mirrors around begin to vibrate with a low humming sound. Reflections distort, like the surface of water into which a stone has been thrown. Through this woman, continues Blackwood, art and reality will become one. Boundaries will dissolve and we'll see the truth behind the veil of the mundane. I make my way closer through the crowd of spectators. Blackwood is accelerating his plan, sensing the threat. From a case beside him, he extracts two objects, the central mirror fragment in an antique microframe and a Venetian stiletto, a thin ceremonial dagger with characteristic engraving on the blade. I recognize the weapon, have seen similar ones in museums. Stilettos of this form were used not for combat but for ritual killings, the thin blade perfect for penetration between ribs, straight to the heart. Minimal bleeding, almost instantaneous death. Reflection becomes reality. Reality becomes reflection. Blackwood raises the mirror fragment, inserting it into the central frame above Naomi. The circle closes after almost 3 centuries. When the fragment locks into place, something inexplicable happens. All mirrors around flash with a bluish light, as if illuminated from within. Reflections distort more, begin to move with noticeable delay relative to the originals. The audience applauds, taking this for special effects of contemporary art. But I see strange expressions on some guests' faces, a mixture of disorientation and vague anxiety. Something's happening to their perception. Blackwood raises the stiletto, taking a step toward Naomi. The final act, the fusion of art and life, form and essence. I understand. The ritual requires the blood of the conductor. Blackwood intends to kill Naomi, here and now, before 100 witnesses who will think they're seeing a performance. The audience falls silent. Light focuses on Blackwood and Naomi, the rest of the space plunging into semi-darkness. The perfect moment for my intervention, but I face an unexpected problem. Shot through space. I fight my way to the inner circle, but Blackwood activates the final element of his system. Light reflected from external mirrors refracts through a complex system of lenses and prisms, creating a holographic effect. Around the platform appear dozens of identical reflections of Blackwood, each exactly repeating his movements. An optical illusion of such complexity that even my trained eye cannot determine which is the real Blackwood and which are his reflections. All simultaneously raise stilettos, approaching Naomi from different directions. I draw my pistol but hesitate. A wrong shot could hit an innocent spectator or, worse, Naomi herself. I need to identify the real Blackwood among dozens of identical figures. Blackwood senses my presence. His voice echoes through the hall. Ah, here's our soldier. You think you can stop what began centuries ago. For a bullet to reach its target, you need to know where that target truly is. He's right. In this kaleidoscope of reflections, I cannot confidently determine which figure is material. It's like trying to shoot a ghost. And then something unexpected happens. Naomi, who seemed immersed in a trance, suddenly opens her eyes. At the moment when the drug's effect should be maximal, she somehow gains clarity of consciousness. Her gaze fixes not on the approaching Blackwood figures, but on one specific detail, the collector's right hand, where the characteristic scar in the shape of an inverted Y is visible. This mark is visible only under certain lighting angles, and only on the real Blackwood. Our eyes meet across the space of the central platform, silent understanding. She slightly tilts her head, indicating direction. Through illusions and reflections, she shows me the truth. This is a moment of absolute concentration, familiar to every sniper. The world narrows to the aiming point, sounds fade, time slows. I analyze the arrangement of mirrors, reflection angles, trajectory of light. Remember countless training sessions in Phantom, where we were taught to make impossible shots, through gaps with ricochets by sound. The solution comes in a split second. I make not a direct shot at Blackwood, but a calculated ricochet. The bullet must reflect off 3 consecutive mirrors at specific angles to strike Blackwood's hand at the moment when the stiletto almost touches Naomi's neck. Calculation inhale, adjustment for refraction angle fire. The sound of the shot, muffled by the built-in suppressor, almost loses itself in the background music. The bullet flies along a complex trajectory, reflecting off mirrors exactly as I calculated. Physics and geometry in pure form, multiplied by years of training and intuition. Chapter 4: Fractured Reality. Shattered Reflection. After my shot, the museum transformed into an epicenter of chaos. Blackwood's stiletto hit the metal construction with a clang, flying from his bullet-pierced hand. The spotlights, previously focused on the living installation, suddenly flooded the entire space with harsh, merciless brightness. The charity evening guests finally saw reality through the illusion of art. Naomi, tied to a strange mechanism, and Blackwood with a bloodied hand and a dagger at his feet. The first second's paralysis like before an explosion. Then a wave of panic, screams crushing at exits, overturned glasses, glittering shards on the marble floor. Security tries to maintain order, but even professionals are confused by the intermediate position between crime and performance. Blackwood, clutching his wounded hand, smiles strangely. Blood seeps through his fingers, drips onto the central mirror in the antique frame. With each drop, the glass seems to come alive, pulsating from within with bluish light. "You cannot stop what has already begun," he shouts, overriding the crowd's noise. "Fragments in each of you, he sees through all reflections, has always seen." In his eyes, not the despair of a loser, but the ecstasy of a believer witnessing a miracle. This disturbs me more than everything that happened before. I make my way through the retreating crowd to the central platform. Naomi is still secured in metal bracelets, her eyes half-closed, breathing shallow. The fixation system is more complex than it appeared from a distance, numerous locks and fastenings, each with a separate mechanism. "Hold on," I say, freeing her wrists first. "It's over, you're safe." But something in her gaze suggests otherwise. When I finally remove the last fastening from her ankle, she falls into my arms, weak as a rag doll. Her skin is cold despite the heat in the hall. "The light inside," she mumbles. "He waits, beyond the edge, always waited." By this time the police arrive, their sirens cutting through the night. Officers surround Blackwood. He doesn't resist, allowing handcuffs to be placed, maintaining a mysterious smile, as if knowing something inaccessible to others. "This isn't the end, Mr. Cole," he says as police lead him past us. "It's merely a tear in the veil. He's already here among us, not in one mirror in all. The beacon. Everything always leads to the beacon." In his eyes, a strange gleam unlike madness, rather absolute certainty. In the evacuation commotion, I notice movement by the broken mirror in the center of the installation. Blackwood's lab assistant, the same one I saw at his mansion, quickly collects shards in a special container lined with dark velvet. He moves methodically, selecting only certain fragments, ignoring others. "Stop," I shout, trying to attract the nearest policeman's attention. "We need to stop him. Those shards are evidence." But my voice drowns in the general noise. When the officer finally reacts and turns in the indicated direction, the assistant has already disappeared, taking with him what might be the key element of the entire puzzle. I focus on Naomi. Right now, her condition is more important than the chase. Paramedics arrive simultaneously with the police, and I hand my wife into their care, explaining she was under the influence of an unknown drug. "We're going to St. Mercy Hospital," the medic informs me, securing an IV. "You can follow us." I nod, casting a final glance at the destroyed installation. Mirrors that recently pulsated with blue light now look ordinary, but something about them has changed. A barely perceptible shift in perspective, like a window frame slightly askew after an earthquake. When the ambulance doors close and the vehicle speeds away, I get an unpleasant feeling that we're being watched by thousands of invisible eyes. From every reflecting surface, from every shop window and puddle on the pavement. Illusion of return. Naomi is discharged from the hospital after 3 days. The diagnosis sounds safe and rational. Drug poisoning by an unknown psychoactive substance with pronounced hallucinogenic effect. Toxicologists discovered traces of a complex chemical cocktail in her blood, including LSD derivatives, ketamine, and a rare alkaloid from South American plants causing high suggestibility. Such substances can cause temporary disorientation, perception disturbance, and increased susceptibility to external suggestion, explains the neurologist when I take her home. But the effects are reversible. Full recovery may take from several days to a couple of weeks. I sign papers, listen to recommendations, receive prescriptions for sedatives and vitamins. Everything under control. A rational medical approach to what happened. This should be reassuring, but it seems to me the doctors are seeing only the surface, like the guests at the charity evening. At home, Naomi appears physically and emotionally exhausted, but more conscious than in recent weeks. She moves slowly, as if still adapting to her own body, but her gaze is clear, focused. "Hungry?" I ask, helping her settle on the couch. "I can make an omelet or order something." "Ethan," her voice sounds fragile but determined. "What happened? I remember fragments. Blackwood, the museum, a strange ritual, but everything's as if in a fog. How did I end up at the center of all this?" I sit beside her, choosing words. How to explain this nightmare without aggravating her condition? "Blackwood manipulated you," I begin. "Used drugs, psychological techniques. He believed in some ancient Venetian magic connected with mirrors. Your installation became part of his insane plan. He wanted to use you as a conductor for some ritual." I don't say he planned to kill her. Not now, when she's so vulnerable. Naomi listens, her face growing paler. When I reach the night at the museum and the interrupted ritual, she closes her eyes. "I remember blood," she whispers. his blood on the mirror and light, cold blue light as if from the depths of the ocean. Then she opens her eyes, and in them, sudden realization. Lucas, her voice trembles. I was unfaithful to you with Lucas, in the labyrinth. Her fingers dig into the sofa armrest, knuckles whitening from tension. It was as if it wasn't me, Ethan. Blackwood. He said I was special, that only through me would art gain true power. I knew it was manipulation, but couldn't resist, as if part of me watched from the sidelines while another followed his orders. I take her hand, feeling how it trembles. You were under the influence of drugs. It's not your fault. You, forgive me, disbelief in her voice. There's nothing to forgive, I answer, and it's true. My anger, my jealousy, all directed at Blackwood and Finch, not at Naomi. She was a victim, not guilty. She presses against me, and we sit like that for several minutes. It seems the fragments of our life are beginning to fall back into place, that we can return to normality. The illusion lasts until midnight. I wake to the sound of footsteps. Naomi is not beside me in bed. Moonlight penetrates through the blinds, drawing silver stripes on the floor. I follow these stripes to the bathroom, from where quiet whispering comes. The door is ajar. Through the crack I see Naomi's back, her tense posture before the mirror. She hasn't turned on the light, and her figure seems just slightly denser than shadow. He was always part of me, I hear her whisper. Even before we met, I felt his presence in reflections. He waited for me to find the fragments. I'm about to interrupt this eerie monologue, but stop when I see what's happening in the mirror. Naomi's lips move, pronouncing one set of words, but her reflection seems to answer her, forming different phrases. This must be a play of light, an optical illusion, enhanced by my fatigue and the tension of recent days. Rational explanations line up in my consciousness, but they all collapse when I see Naomi's reflection smile, though her actual face remains motionless. I retreat silently, return to bed, pretending to be asleep when she returns. Her skin, when she lies next to me, is colder than it should be. Something returned from the museum with Naomi, something that wasn't in her before, and I'm not sure it can be cured with sedatives and vitamins. Split. After a week, the symptoms become impossible to ignore. Naomi loses orientation in space, sometimes stopping mid-room, looking bewildered as if not understanding where she is. She talks to mirrors, not just in the bathroom, but to any reflecting surface. The kettle, window glass, screen of a turned-off TV. But most disturbing, her new studio. The room I refurbished for her after her release is now hung with mirrors of all possible sizes and shapes. Some she bought, others found. Still others seem to have been brought from somewhere. Walls, ceiling, even parts of the floor covered with reflecting surfaces, creating an endless kaleidoscope of images. Why do you need so many mirrors? I ask, standing at the studio doorway, hesitant to enter. Naomi sits in the room's center on a low stool, surrounded by her own reflections, multiplied to infinity. I see different versions of myself, she answers, not turning. In each mirror, another Naomi. Some of them are me at other moments in time. Others are me in worlds that might have existed. And some. She falls silent, her shoulders tensing. And some aren't me at all. I step into the room, wincing at the dizziness this visual chaos causes. Naomi, this is the drug effect, hallucinations. No, she turns sharply, and I see her eyes redden from lack of sleep. These aren't hallucinations. I've always seen what others don't. Remember, I told you how I perceive music in colors and shapes, how I feel textures where others see only surfaces. My synesthesia isn't a disease, Ethan. It's a gift. I just now see more. She stands, approaches me, takes my hands. At this moment, her gaze clears, as if a veil falls away, and I see my Naomi, the woman I fell in love with 5 years ago. Something's happening to me, she says more quietly. I feel like I'm losing myself. Part of me remained there inside the glass, as if I've split into fragments and not all returned. Her fingers squeeze mine with unexpected strength. And what returned? Not just me. Something ancient watches from every reflection. It's patient. It's waited almost 3 centuries, and now uses me as a bridge. Her words frighteningly echo what Blackwood said, as if they've both become part of the same insane worldview. One morning, the situation reaches a critical point. I enter the bedroom after a run and see Naomi standing before the dressing table mirror, her hair tangled, face wearing an expression of absolute terror. "Naomi," I call, "what happened?" She turns and I don't recognize her expression. Pure, unmudded rage. "You," she screams, backing away. "Not real, imposter." "Naomi, it's me, Ethan." I try to speak calmly, approaching slowly with open palms. "Liar," she grabs a desk lamp, swings. The real Ethan is in the reflection. I see him there behind the glass. He's trying to warn me. I have to disarm her, carefully but firmly. When I restrain her, she fights with unexpected strength, then suddenly goes limp, her eyes roll back, and she loses consciousness. At the hospital, doctors diagnose post-traumatic syndrome with psychotic episodes. They prescribe tranquilizers and neuroleptics, promising that medication therapy will stabilize her condition. But after 2 days, it becomes clear the medicines only worsen the situation. Naomi transforms into a shadow, apathetic, empty-gazed, unable to focus. Her only sign of life, when she sees her reflection. Then her eyes light with a strange gleam, and she reaches toward the mirror as if wanting to pass through it. Doctors shrug. The psychiatrist suggests more aggressive treatment, electroconvulsive therapy. I refuse. Take Naomi from the hospital. If traditional medicine is powerless, perhaps it's worth turning to non-traditional sources. To those who understand the nature of what we've encountered. Church of Shadows. The old Catholic St. Augustine Cathedral is located in the northern part of the city, away from tourist routes. The gray stone building, darkened by time and smog, resembles a fortress more than a place of worship. Narrow, stained glass windows admit minimal light. A heavy wooden door creaks when I push it. Inside, semi-darkness, the smell of incense and wax candles. Few parishioners, mostly elderly people, have bowed their heads in prayer. In a distant transept, a hunched figure in a cassock arranges fresh flowers before a side altar. "I'm looking for Father Nathaniel," I say quietly, approaching. The monk straightens, and I see his face, ancient, lined with wrinkles, with deeply set dark eyes that seem to see more than the surface shows. "You have found him, my son." His voice creaks like old floorboards. "How may I help?" I don't know where to begin. How to explain in rational words the irrational experience of recent weeks. But something in his gaze suggests this man won't dismiss my story as a sign of mental disorder. "My wife, something happened to her, something connected with mirrors and an ancient Venetian ritual." At the mention of Venice, his eyes narrow. He looks around as if checking if anyone is eavesdropping, then signals me to follow. "Not here," he says. "Too many ears, too many eyes, even in God's house." We descend a narrow spiral staircase into a crypt beneath the church. An ancient room with a low ceiling, walls of unprocessed stone, the only light source, several candles in iron holders. Here books and manuscripts are stored, some looking as if they're several centuries old. "You're not the first to come to me with such a story," says Father Nathaniel, taking a leather folio from the upper shelf. "Though the last time was almost 20 years ago, a young couple from Venice, she also changed after an encounter with certain mirrors." He opens the book, and I see ancient engravings depicting rituals around mirror constructions. People in strange garments surrounding a person in the center of a complex pattern of mirrors. "The Venetian cult of keepers of reflected light," explains the monk, "existed since the 15th century, officially destroyed by the Inquisition in 1729, but some practices continued secretly. He turns the page, showing a drawing of an alchemical laboratory with a central mirror surrounded by smaller ones. They believed mirrors aren't just reflecting surfaces, but portals between worlds. With proper glass processing and special lighting conditions, one could create a living mirror, capable of retaining part of the viewer's soul. The next page contains detailed instructions for creating such mirrors, special alloys for amalgam, geometric proportions of the frame, a special polishing process. According to these texts, continues the monk, the main master of this art was a certain Emilio, whose surname is written differently in various sources. He created a perfect mirror that could not just capture parts of souls, but hold a complete human soul. Emilio Blackwood, I say. Father Nathaniel starts. You know this name. His descendant, Magnus Blackwood, tried to recreate his ritual, used my wife as a conductor. The monk crosses himself, muttering a short prayer. Was the ritual interrupted? He asks. Yes, I stopped it before. It could be completed. But blood was spilled on the mirror. His fingers gripped my arm with unexpected strength. Yes, I recall drops of Blackwood's blood falling on the central fragment. A little, but yes. Father Nathaniel closes his eyes, as if in prayer or deep regret. Even an incomplete ritual could cause a soul splitting in your wife, he says finally. Part of her essence might have been captured by the mirror and held there, while something else might have partially entered her. Something else, I ask. That which waited on the other side. The monk points to an engraving depicting a human figure, half emerging from a mirror. Maybe Emilio himself. According to these texts, he didn't die in 1729. He went into the mirror, becoming the first who could completely cross the boundary between worlds, but not the last to try returning. I remember Naomi's words about the watcher who waited and something ancient that watches from every reflection. Is this really possible? How can I help her? I ask, pushing aside doubts. It doesn't matter if I believe all this. What matters is how to save Naomi. There's only one way of healing, answers the monk, flipping pages to a section written in small print. Find and destroy the central ritual mirror, the one connecting all fragments together. Only then can your wife's soul fully return to her body. He turns a few more pages, showing a destruction ritual diagram. But this must be done with special caution, he warns. The mirror will defend itself. It will use your own fears, your doubts, your strongest emotions against you, and he who waits behind the reflection, he won't release his prey easily. I study the instructions, memorizing key points. Much sounds like superstition and mysticism, but after all I've seen, I can't dismiss the possibility that ancient texts conceal truth. Where should I look for the central mirror? I ask. It must be where the greatest power concentrates, answers the monk. In a place connected with the first ritual, perhaps where Emilio lived or worked. Leaving the church, I already know my next direction. The beacon, said Blackwood before arrest. The same landmark mentioned by his guard. Now I need to find out where this beacon is and what connects it to Emilio Blackwood's story. Guardian of Reflections. The police evidence storage facility isn't a place you can just walk into. But my connections in law enforcement, remaining from service days, open certain doors. Detective Harper, leading Blackwood's case, agrees to meet me in an unofficial setting. The central mirror disappeared, he reports, stirring coffee in a diner across from the precinct. Removed from storage 3 days ago by special order. Feds took it, blamed it all on national security. Feds, I ask, FBI. If only, he shakes his head. Some agency I've never even heard of. Specific clearance code, documents with seals I haven't seen before. All done perfectly legally but smells like a rat. He continues, lowering his voice. And something else. Blackwood's dead. Suicide in pretrial detention cell. hanged himself with a sheet 6 hours after arrest. Surveillance camera accidentally turned off for 15 minutes, guard stepped away, classic setup. I feel a chill run down my spine. Too many coincidences, too many accidents. I've got something else. Harper takes a folded paper from his inner pocket. Information on Blackwood's relatives. The only living one, maternal granduncle, Alessandro Vinci, 92 years old, lighthouse keeper on Raven Isle. A recluse, hasn't left the island for almost 40 years. Raven Isle, a small patch of land 30 miles from the coast. Abandoned fishing village, ancient lighthouse, several utility buildings. The perfect place for someone who wants to remain unnoticed. Thank you, I say, taking the note. This might save my wife. Be careful, warns Harper. Whatever's happening goes beyond ordinary crime. If you attract interest from the people who took the mirror, I can't help. 20 hours later, I'm en route to the island. Left Naomi under the care of my former comrade from the medical corps, the only person I can trust with my wife in such a state. Sarah doesn't ask unnecessary questions and knows how to handle patients in crisis. The rented boat glides over dark water. The lighthouse grows from pre-dawn fog, a tall stone tower on a rocky outcrop. The structure looks much older than its official age, as if it stood here for centuries, contrary to historical records claiming the lighthouse was built in the 1890s. I dock on the leeward side where rocks form natural protection from waves. Before me, a narrow path leading to buildings. The old keeper's house, sheds, the lighthouse itself, all look well maintained despite their age. Someone clearly cares for this place. The house door is unlocked, a strange circumstance for such a secluded location. Inside, ascetic furnishings, simple furniture, bookshelves, an antique pendulum clock on the wall, but no signs of life. The hearth cold, dishes clean and put away, bed neatly made. I inspect the rooms one by one until I come across a basement door. It isn't just locked, it's protected by a complex mechanical lock that looks inappropriately modern in this ancient house. My breaking skills prove useful. After 3 minutes, the door opens. The staircase leads deep underground, much deeper than an ordinary basement should be. Walls of rough stone, places damp with condensation. The air grows colder with each step down. Finally, I reach the bottom. Before me, a tunnel leading in the direction of the lighthouse. A tunnel that shouldn't exist, the distance too great, the engineering solution too complex for standard 19th century construction. I move along it cautiously, keeping my gun ready. After 200 meters, the tunnel widens, opening into a spacious underground chamber directly beneath the lighthouse base. And what I see there makes me freeze in place. A room completely lined with mirrors. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of mirrors of different sizes and shapes cover every inch of walls, ceiling, and even parts of the floor. They're placed at different angles, creating a kaleidoscope of reflections in which it's easy to lose orientation. In the center of the room, an old man in a chair, facing a huge mirror in an antique frame mounted on a stone pedestal. This mirror doesn't reflect the room. It seems filled with slowly moving bluish fog. The old man doesn't move when I enter. His withered body resembles a mummy, skin almost transparent with protruding veins. But his eyes, unnaturally bright blue, are alive and attentive. They follow me through the reflection in the central mirror. Welcome, soldier. His voice sounds simultaneously ancient and strong. Magnus said you might come. I raise my gun, aiming either at the old man or the mirror. I haven't decided which presents the greater threat. Who are you? I ask, though I already guess the answer. In this body I was known as Alessandro Vinci, answers the old man. Before that was Edward Blackwood and many more names over the centuries, but originally, Emilio, always Emilio. I glance around the room, noticing oddities. On the walls, portraits of the same man in different clothes, corresponding to different eras. the oldest, judging by style, dated 1724. In each portrait, the same piercing blue eyes, the same studying gaze. "You're too late, soldier," continues the old man in a voice I recognize. It sounds almost identical to Magnus Blackwood's. "Magnus was merely an instrument, as was your wife. The fragments have returned home. The process is irreversible." "What have you done to Naomi?" My voice remains firm despite the surrealistic situation. Nothing," the old man smiles, revealing yellow teeth. "She opened the door, with her art, her gift to see what's hidden from others. Her soul, special, the perfect conductor between worlds." I take a step toward the central mirror, but the old man unexpectedly rises from his chair. His movements don't correspond to the age and fragility of his body. They're fluid, precise, with strength that seems impossible. "You don't understand what you've encountered, soldier," he says, and his voice changes, becoming deeper, resonating from mirrored walls. "I existed beyond the boundary for almost 3 centuries, observed, learned, waited. Human limitations no longer constrain me. And I understand this is true. Before me isn't a decrepit old man, but something merely using this body as a temporary vessel. Something much more ancient and dangerous." Fragment in the palm. He lunges at me with inhuman speed. I barely manage to dodge, and his hand with unnaturally elongated fingers passes millimeters from my throat. I fire twice, but he seems to anticipate my actions, easily evading the line of fire. I understand his advantage. Mirrors. They're arranged so he sees me from any angle, predicting each movement. The room is designed as a perfect trap for those who don't understand the principle of its operation. We circle the room. I try to maintain distance. He continuously attacks, moving so quickly that at times it seems I'm fighting several opponents simultaneously. His body, despite its age, possesses the strength and flexibility of a trained athlete. "Your wife is now part of something greater," he says between attacks. "Like others whose reflections I've collected for centuries, little fragments of souls feeding me, allowing me to exist between worlds." He delivers a strike which I block with my forearm, but the pain is piercing, like colliding with a metal rod, not human flesh. "The body is merely a vessel," he continues, as if reading my thoughts. "This one is almost 100 years old, but it serves its purpose. Soon I'll need a new one, younger, stronger." I'm beginning to tire. Each of my movements becomes slightly slower, each block slightly less effective. He corners me where mirrors form a semicircle, cutting off escape routes. In a desperate lunge, I throw myself forward, trying to break through to the central mirror, the one that, according to the monk, is the key to the entire system. But the old man intercepts me, his fingers closing around my throat with the force of a steel trap. "You thought you could defeat something that has existed for centuries," he hisses, lifting me off the floor. "I survived the Inquisition, revolutions, wars. I've seen empires fall and new ones born. What are you against this, soldier?" Darkness encroaches at the edges of my vision, lungs burning from oxygen deprivation. I realize I'm losing, that my military training is useless against something that doesn't obey the laws of human physiology. And then I notice a peculiarity. An antique pendulum clock hanging on the only section of wall without mirrors, its reflection visible in many mirrors around, but the pendulum moves at different speeds in different reflections. In some, slower; in others, slower; in others, faster than the original. A sudden understanding pierces me. Time in the reflections flows differently. This isn't just a visual effect, it's a fundamental property of Emilio's mirrors, and possibly his vulnerability. Gathering my remaining strength, I don't attempt to attack the old man. Instead, I draw my knife and throw it not at my opponent but at the central mirror on the pedestal. The blade cuts through the air and embeds itself in the surface of the ancient artifact. For a moment nothing happens, just a thin crack running from the point of impact. Then the mirror shatters into hundreds of fragments with a deafening sound, like the scream of 1,000 voices. The grip on my throat weakens. I fall to the floor, gasping for air, and see the old man recoiling, his face contorting with pain and fury. "What have you done?" he screams, but his voice is no longer so powerful. Centuries of work. With horror and fascination, I watch as his body begins to disintegrate. The skin shrivels, cracks, exposing bones. The eyes, still bright blue, burn with rage but gradually dim. He tries to reach for me, but his limbs no longer obey. Within a minute that seems like eternity, what was once Emilio Blackwood transforms into a desiccated mummy, crumbling at the slightest movement of air. From the great alchemist who survived centuries, only a handful of dust and darkened bones remain. All mirrors in the room dim, their surfaces covered with networks of cracks, like a sympathetic response to the destruction of the central one. The blue light that pulsated in them disappears, leaving only ordinary reflections. I rise feeling a strange silence, not just absence of sound, but absence of presence which, I now realize, pressed upon my consciousness the entire time I was in this room. My phone rings, making me start. It's Sarah watching over Naomi. "Ethan," her voice sounds excited but with notes of relief. "I don't know what you did, but Naomi just came to herself. Really came to herself. She's disoriented but recognizes me, asks meaningful questions." "I'll be there soon," I answer, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Tell her it's over." Leaving the underground room, I notice how one of the central mirror fragments strangely flickers, retaining an echo of blue light. Almost unconsciously, I pick it up, a sharp fragment the size of a coin. The moment I touch it, I feel a slight discharge of static electricity and instinctively clench my hand. The fragment cuts into my palm, leaving a shallow but painful cut. I want to throw it away, but something stops me. Instead, I put the fragment in my pocket, deciding to deal with it later. Right now, the main thing is to return to Naomi. 3 days later, Naomi and I return to a semblance of normal life. She's completely healed physically, but suffers from partial amnesia, remembers nothing about the events of recent months, doesn't remember Blackwood or the ritual or her obsession with mirrors. Doctors say it's a protective mechanism of the psyche, blocking traumatic memories. I don't insist on their return. Some things are better left in oblivion. Learning from me about her infidelity with Lucas Finch, the only part of events I felt necessary to disclose. She cries, asking forgiveness, genuinely horrified by her actions. "I don't understand how I could do this," she says, wiping tears. "It's completely unlike me, I feel, as if it was someone else in my body." "It was," I answer, embracing her, "and now that someone is gone forever." We decide to remove all mirrors from the house, replace them with simple functional surfaces where necessary. As if by silent agreement, neither of us wants to see our reflections more than absolutely necessary. On the last evening, as we complete this process, I embrace Naomi, watching the sunset through our living room window. "We don't need reflections to see love," I say, kissing her temple. She smiles, pressing against me, and at this moment I notice something glinting in my palm. The fragment of Venetian mirror that I picked up at the lighthouse has somehow embedded itself deep under my skin. I don't remember the wound being so serious, but now the fragment seems to have grown into the flesh, becoming part of me. And most disturbing, it pulses with faint blue light in rhythm with my heartbeat. I close my hand, hiding the glow from Naomi. Perhaps tomorrow I'll see a doctor to remove the fragment. Perhaps it's just a play of light in my imagination, overloaded by recent events. Or perhaps the hunt for reflections is not yet complete, and now I carry a particle of the mirror world within me, a constant reminder that the boundary between reality and reflection is thinner than we're accustomed to think. I hold Naomi tighter, as if fearing she might disappear, and deep inside I feel the fragment in my palm growing slightly warmer, almost alive. If you enjoyed this story, please support the author with a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your emotions in the comments. Thank you.